What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And join me to do just that is Chris Allen. Chris, what's going on, buddy?
Man, it's another wild week of action, and I don't know. I'm probably going to need a day or two to process everything that we just watched, from the injuries to, let's just say, the topsy-turvy games that we watched. Of course, we'll get into my Bengals completely laying an egg up in Minnesota today. So it's been a lot, but we can talk through it. All right. I know how loud folks try and tweet through it on social media. We're going to talk through it tonight.
We're going to try to talk through it, and there's a lot to talk through because it was an insane day of NFL action, and we are, like Chris said, just still beginning to process this. But if you haven't joined us for one of our live Sunday shows, here is how the show flows. First segment, it's the games that we care most about, plus our boom and bust players of the week. Our second segment is the games that we sort of care about. And the third segment is the games that could have been an email. So before we jump into the games that we care the most about, let's start with our boom and bust players of the week. Our boom player with over 30 fantasy points has to be Colts running back Jonathan Taylor, who just went crazy against the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to pose it to you this way, Chris Allen. If we redrafted today, I think Jonathan Taylor might be the first overall pick in fantasy drafts, maybe bare minimum, like second. Am I off base on that? Because this guy has crushed it to start this season.
No, I don't think you're overselling it or anything like that. I know most folks, they might look at it as more of a results-based type of approach, but let's think back to what we were thinking about Jonathan Taylor coming into this season. Yes, he was going to be operating behind a, let's say, above average at the very least offensive line for Indianapolis. And let's say, regardless of what you thought about either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, we knew that there was going to be a situation where, yeah, the quarterback might hold things back, but we've seen enough out of Jonathan Taylor as one of the better pure rushers of the game that he has that game-breaking elite type of home run speed like a Saquon Barkley or even a Bijan Robinson. So I wouldn't think it's too crazy to have him up there. And also, if we can also assume that some of the receiving work was going to be back for him in 2025, that should also kick him into the earlier parts of the first round. So excellent to see him there. And of course, we weren't all of us are still shocked to see Daniel Jones doing what he's doing. But even from an opportunity standpoint, seeing Jonathan Taylor doing what he's doing for the first 2 weeks, I mean, we saw a similar run from him towards the back end of last year. So I wouldn't say that's too much of a stretch to say that he should be at least valued with the rest of the elite rushers that we were trying to push into the earlier parts of the first round throughout the offseason.
That's the key thing here, right? It's that the receiving work, as you highlighted, that was the tough part. And I think I said this on the show. Maybe it was with you last week, but I know I've said it on the show here over the last week or so that I just feel like we didn't talk enough about Jonathan Taylor this offseason because we were all hyper-focused on the pass catchers and like, oh, who's going to benefit if Daniel Jones is behind center? We didn't really talk enough about the fact that Jonathan Taylor is going to benefit from a receiving standpoint if Daniel Jones is behind center. And he's also going to have those touchdown opportunities if the offense is more efficient, which it certainly has been with Daniel Jones. And also he's not going to get vultured at the goal line as much by Daniel Jones as he will with Anthony Richardson. So again, there's just a lot of things pointing in the favor of Jonathan Taylor. This is, I think, a good team with a good defense and a talented offense that's being manned well by Daniel Jones. They punted for the first time today, but they were manned well still by Daniel Jones in this game. Taylor's just going to have the right scripts that we want from a fantasy running back. And also, by the way, he's awesome. Like, he's really, really good at football, and he's been incredible to start this year. So I don't think it's an overreaction to say he could be the first overall pick if we redrafted today. A player who was the consensus first pick in fantasy drafts this year, and unfortunately is like kind of half, if maybe not 3/4 of our bust for this week. I think the Bengals wide receivers, buddy, unfortunately have to go down as the busts of this week. And look, we know what happened here. Joe Burrow's no longer in the mix, but still, Chris, I expected a little bit better than 5 for 50 and a lost fumble for Jamar Chase and 1 catch for 15 yards for T. Higgins in this one.
Yeah, that's just watching or listening to the whole game. It's my son's birthday today, so happy birthday to Nate, 12 years old, my little man. But the biggest thing that I saw from the Bengals today was, and I believe Mina Kimes tweeted this out earlier today, that the offenses or just the teams that didn't invest in the running back position were reaping some of those consequences. And we really saw that bear out for Jake Browning and just the rest of the Bengals offense. 56.7% pressure rate for Browning today against the Vikings and Brian Flores' defense. And so if you're not even able to operate behind whatever makeshift offensive line that the Bengals tried to trot out, and that was even when Joe Burrow was there, because we saw him getting manhandled by Myles Garrett in week 1 all the way up until this toe injury in week 2. I was hopeful, but still relatively skeptical about how they're going to come out and put together any sort of offense against the Vikings. So seeing both T and Chase kind of flounder from that standpoint, from a pass catching perspective, I saw this at least in the range of outcomes. People take a drink if you hear somebody say that. But hopefully better days are ahead and they can figure out what to do with this, because this game script and this type of offense is just untenable for moving forward.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the Bengals later in this show. I will just say I do feel like a lot of these, negative performances and like, hey, we're panicking about these wide receivers, et cetera. They're seemingly coming after playing Brian Flores and that Vikings defense, which still looks great. So that is a big variable to consider. We got to consider the opponent. So we might not want to overreact too much to the Bengals passing game, but I like your point about Chase Brown. We'll put a pin in that and we'll come back to the Bengals later on. But with that, let's get into the games that we care about most from week 3. And we're starting off with a game that was a little bit of a blowout here, but still, I think we got a lot to take away from Bears 31, Cowboys 14. We've got the Chicago Bears. Let's start with them, the winning team. What did you think watching the Bears in this game, Chris? Big performance from Caleb Williams with 4 touchdowns through the air.
He looked a little bit more comfortable in Ben Johnson's scheme as compared to the past couple of weeks. Fewer false start penalties and some of those infractions where a lot of the things need to be in rhythm or you need to be in sync with the offense. And so seeing that, it gives me a little bit more hope about this pairing between Williams and Johnson moving forward. And of course, from the play calling standpoint, you have to believe that there's also some credence to what I was just saying about Williams having a better hold of the playbook. We saw that flea flicker to Luther Burden earlier in the game as well. Couple of trick plays here and there. So seeing Ben Johnson get a bit more into his bag, some of the same things that we saw out of him when he was in Detroit, at least gives me at least some more confidence that this is going to work out between the two of them. And while it's like a lot of us wanted to see more out of Roma Dunze or even folks that were holding on to DJ Moore, seeing at least more options for Caleb Williams and also him still being able to create out of structure. At least if you drafted Caleb Williams, you have to be happy about that. And of course, again, while we expected a bit more out of Roma Dunze, still seeing him find pay dirt on 4 or 5 targets. No, actually, he was up to 6 or 7 targets if memory serves. But still, being productive as that wide receiver 1 from the Bears, that's what you love to see.
Yeah, team high targets for Roma Dunze, 7 targets, 3 catches, 62 yards, and the touchdowns. Yeah, you were in the range there, buddy. And he had the one play where he probably could have caught another touchdown. He's like left a play or 2 on the field every single week, but he's still a young receiver that's getting better and better. His one touchdown did come on just an atrocious rep from Trayvon Diggs he's gonna want back. He left this game with an injury. He wasn't the only Cowboys big name player to leave with an injury. We'll get to them in just a second. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. This was the most comfortable I think that Caleb has looked in the offense. Now, obviously, it's a bad opponent. The Cowboys defense just stinks, but he nevertheless didn't take any sacks, didn't create negative plays, throws 4 touchdowns, and it was a little bit of a show-off game, I think, for Ben Johnson. You mentioned some of the trick plays. The big one was the Luther Burden touchdown where DeAndre Swift pitched it back. That ball was in the air for a while from DeAndre Swift. A little bit. Let's get this back to the quarterback because, Luther Burden just wide open down there. Now, Burden leads the team with 101 yards and a touchdown on just 3 catches, caught all 3 targets. He still ran just 9 routes, so it's not as if we've seen any big-time playing time changes here. 31% route participation, which is certainly higher than it was, but it's not like he overtook one of the top 2 receivers here. But the fact that Ben Johnson said, hey, we're going to increase the packages for Luther Burden. We want to get him more involved. They followed up on that promise. That's at least just, again, not a guy that you're playing in fantasy right now, but we want to continue to track that because he might be somebody that we play at some point. There were a couple other kind of tricky looking plays. Everybody kind of got involved here. Cole Kmet scored a touchdown. DJ Moore was super quiet throughout the course of the day, but he ends up getting a touchdown late in this one. DeAndre Swift has a couple of big plays in the passing game as well. So yeah, this was just kind of anything that you wanted to get, you can get it against that Cowboys defense. We'll see. It's a nice confidence builder, I think, for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson in their relationship together. Just don't expect like 4 touchdowns from a fantasy standpoint every single week, because that has a lot to do with the opponent here.
No, and for folks that are rostering Colston Loveland, he went out, I think, midway through the game with a hip injury, didn't return. So I'd say pay attention to that as we move into week 4, just from a waiver wire standpoint, if Loveland was your starting a tight end.
Even he had a nice 31-yard reception, his lone catch of the day, but that was a nice catch by him. Cole Kmet might be a guy who ends up being playable, maybe like in deeper spots playable if Colston Loveland does miss time and he just consolidates all the tight end snaps there. Let's go to the team that lost this one, Cowboys. I really thought they'd be better against this Bears defense. What did you think watching this Cowboys team, which of course did lose their number 1 wide receiver? CeeDee Lamb left this game early. He tried to return and then immediately was out of this game. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said after the game, the team doctors told him CeeDee Lamb's ankle injury is not as serious as it could have been. Quote, let's just keep our fingers crossed. So that stinks. Obviously losing your number 1 wide receiver. They don't have a lot of depth behind George Pickens. There's like role players, but nevertheless, I did expect a bit of a better offensive performance from Dallas in this game. What did you think watching them on this one?
Anybody on this show take CeeDee Lamb as their first pick from Primetime Picks?
Oh.
Anybody do that? Oh, that was me. That was me. Okay, yeah, that was me. So that was great to watch. Cool. But I'd say the shocking thing out of this was it was good to see George Pickens getting involved a little bit more, 9 targets on the day. But of course, that egregious drop that turned into the interception off of his hands there. But I was hoping to see a bit more from a production standpoint and actually see a little bit more of the switch up in terms of how he's deployed on the field. Now, this was something that they weren't really planning for, obviously, not having CeeDee Lamb on the field. We saw more of the underneath looks go to guys like Jalen Tolbert and, of course, Kevontae Turpin working in also from the slot. So I think that was my only disappointing thing from the Cowboys offense, where this is a guy that you paid quite a bit of money in order to acquire, and only seeing like that level of production from him. Whereas Jake Ferguson with 13 catches on the day is the one that's really taking a lot of the brunt of CeeDee Lamb not being in the lineup. So hopefully that starts to shift a bit moving forward. But otherwise, without having CeeDee Lamb on the field, you can see how this Cowboys offense kind of struggles without having their number 1 there.
Yeah, Pickens still target on 28% of his routes, according to the source I'm looking at right now, 2.12 yards per out run. So like it was a nice day for him. He had the one sick touchdown reception, but then gave the ball quite literally to the Bears. Yeah, so it's like that's the full George Pickens experience. Look, even if he's improved, he's still George Pickens, man. Like there's going to be some boneheaded moments combined with some really nice moments, which is why he's a 2, not a 1. You don't want to have George Pickens as your 1. You want to have him as the 2. So not having CeeDee Lamb here is problematic. But I think one of the biggest points you made there is that we didn't see like a usage change for George Pickens after CeeDee Lamb goes down here. George Pickens, again, is the numbers I'm looking at right now are fully up to date. He only took 2.2 snaps in the slot, 2.2% snaps in the slot in this game. So it was like Jalen Tolbert is kind of replacing as the slot receiver. Kevontae Turpin's kind of replacing as the slot receiver. And that's just going to be tough for Pickens to have to both access a ceiling if there's no CeeDee Lamb and also have more of like a consistent floor that's not matchup based. So that is something that I maybe expected a little bit more varied usage from Pickens, but if he's purely just going to be the every down X receiver, there's absolutely going to be some volatility. But if you started him, you'll take 68 yards and a touchdown. You're just kind of
100%.
more.
Yeah.
One more update here on the Cowboys. Javonte Williams, who I took in the 3rd round of our little draft on the Fantasy Football Live this morning, he still led the team with 15 touches, 92 total yards, but he did lose a fumble. That's another thing with Cowboys in this game is like turnovers really just killed some drives that ultimately just gave the Bears favorable positions. And once, like, if you're going to get a lead on this Cowboys defense, you're not going to survive that without your number 1 receiver on the other side of it.
No, and just the weirdest fumble, because it wasn't like he was going to the ground. And you know how typical running backs and their fumbles, they're going to the ground and having to either protect themselves or try and maintain some sort of balance, and the ball gets punched out. He was running down the sideline, and the defender just came up and grabbed it out of his hands and stole his lunch money. It was just the weirdest sequence right there for Williams. But it was good to see Shoddy go back to him and continue to use him. Of course, Miles Sanders did mix in for a bit, but like we were talking about earlier this morning, the fact that they were going up against the Bears defense, having the number of rushing lanes that Williams did, I mean, picked up a lot of chunk runs. I mean, not that we like to use yards per carry, but seeing him average like 6 to 7 per tote, I mean, solid output. But of course, having the fumble and then not really being mixed in enough from a pass game standpoint to really offset some of that. I mean, yeah, 5 for 16 from receiving standpoint from Williams, but I would say that it's the rushing portion. We were hoping to really see him get into the box against this Bear defense. So better days ahead, hopefully, but still, he's in control of the backfield, so I'm not too concerned about his output moving forward.
All right, let's get to a game that was actually competitive here now that we got that one out of the way since it just wrapped up. Let's get to Eagles 33, Rams 26. Early in the third quarter, what a wild finish to this one. One of many wild finishes. Early in the third quarter, the Rams led this game 26-7. Then somebody went down to Kevin Patullo, Eagles offensive coordinator, who I don't think is impressed over the first 3 weeks. Somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, Hey, Kev, big dog. You know that you have like some of the best collection of receiving talent in the NFL. Suddenly, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith kind of go crazy. They combined for 14 catches, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 19 targets in this game. And of course, the game finished with a wild just blocked field goal by Jordan Davis, who returned it for a touchdown, almost cracked 19 miles an hour. I saw Nate Tice tweet that out according to Next Gen Stats. So wild finish to this one. But yeah, the big man was rolling. They were talking about how in shape he had gotten. Well, it showed on this one. So what did you think seeing the Eagles passing game suddenly return to light here, Chris?
Well, here was the jailbreak type situation that you would want to have for Jalen Hurts, whereas beforehand, the Eagles were at least in somewhat control of the previous 2 matches. So having him drop back, I mean, he had 37 dropbacks in this game. That's the most on the season. Having him throw farther downfield, 8.6 air yards per attempt. That's also the most for the season. I mean, that's where you get that production to guys like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So while I'm not, I say that you were talking earlier today about trying to at least have continued trust in a guy like AJ Brown. These are those types of situations where you know that those two, like the talent that they have, and also how often Jalen Hurts is going to be looking for them. I know there was a shift to more running backs and tight ends in week 1. Over 3/4 of attempts were going back to wide receivers in, last week, and it was the same for this week. We just need that production to get there. So I'm not too terribly concerned about like AJ Brown, Devonta moving forward. I'm not looking at this as a fluke. I'm thinking this is more of how they want to try and operate moving forward. So still, it was good to see both of the wide receivers get into the box. And so to give fantasy managers a bit more confidence starting them in the future.
Yeah, I mentioned that A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith combined for 14 catches, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. 11 of those catches and 136 of those yards came on throws outside the numbers, which is very classic Eagles under Jalen Hurts. Like, we're pushing the ball deep outside the numbers. He's not a perfect quarterback. He's not a perfect passer, especially like working and matriculating the offense in the quick game or over the middle of the field. But he's really good on those deeper passes outside the numbers. And this felt like a moment where maybe the light came on and it was just like, oh, right, like this is how we run this passing game. And I do think the Rams were selling out a little bit to stop the run. Saquon, by the way, this season is averaging 3.3 yards per carry. I'm wondering if that's concerning to you all or concerning to you at all so far this year. But felt like they were kind of keying in. They didn't want to let up those long runs that they let up multiple times last season to Saquon. And those Rams corners, as good as that defense is, the corners are an issue in isolated coverage like that, specifically in these tight windows that A.J. Brown was winning in all day.
Not too concerned about Saquon. He still had over 90% of the team's running back carries. And for folks that drafted Saquon in the early rounds, these were the types of games that you potentially signed up for, because Hurts and the tush push, that's sometimes how they wind up getting into the end zone. So if we are getting most of the running back carries for Saquon out of the Eagles backfield, and he's also mixing in the passing game, he got 5 targets in this matchup, I would say that you kind of take your lumps and you take the highs with the lows for somebody like Saquon, and you go on about your business and hope for better production in week 4, because the opportunity is definitely going to be there for him.
All right. On the Rams side of things here, like I said, this was shaping up to be a win from them before just A.J. Brown decided to take the game over. Jalen Hurts decided to take the game over. We learned a few things about their offense, though. Number one, Kyren Williams had 22 touches to 8 for Blake Corum. So Kyren Williams continues to be the guy for the Rams.
Yep.
They might mix Blake Corum in a little bit, but if you were kind of scared off on reports over the course of this week, it looks like that was a little bit unfounded. In the passing game, Chris, Puka Nacua remains a machine. I mean, he's like the favorite to lead the league in receiving yards right now, would be my guess. According to our guy, Joel Smith, Puka Nacua is the first wide receiver with 330-plus receiving yards and no touchdowns in the first 3 games since Puka Nacua in 2023. So got to get him a receiving touchdown. He does have that one long rush from a touchdown perspective, but Davante Adams in this game, he did have the one touchdown where he was kind of in zone coverage there, ends up being guarded by Reed Blankenship. But NFL Pro notes that otherwise, Quinyon Mitchell shadowed Davante Adams on 79.4% of his routes, which it's the first game in Mitchell's career where he shadowed a receiver on over 60% of their routes, and he allowed just 2 catches for 12 yards on 5 targets to Adams. So, I mean, listen, Adams had the big play. Like, that's what you're going to want to see. But that Eagles defense did make it hard on the Rams, like, passing game deep in this particular contest.
And I was maybe foolishly thinking that Sean McVay might get into his bag and say, well, I've got these 2 awesome wide receivers, but here are some ancillary guys we want to get mixed into in order to fool you. No, they weren't doing any of that. No. It was still 80%, over 80% of the routes for both those guys. I mean, Jordan Whittington, 30% of the routes. Tutu Atwell, 40% of the routes. Tyler Higbee, less than half of the routes. So it really is just Davante Adams and Puka Nacua producing most of whatever it is that Stafford's spinning down the field. So my general takeaway from this is you only want 3 guys from this offense. It's Kyren Williams, it's Puka Nacua, it's Davante Adams. After that, I have zero interest in even trying to roster anybody with LAR sticking next to their name for the time being.
I think that's 100% right. And I mean, they've just been the most concentrated offense in the NFL so far this season. So when they go against teams like the damn Titans, that's going to work out. When they go against the Eagles, listen, you're not complaining if you started any of those Rams guys in fantasy. They all had a great game. They're just going to be closer to their floor than their ceiling in this one. Next game that we really care about here, Chargers 23, Broncos 20. This was a close, hard-fought game. I thought both defenses had their moments. I thought both offenses had their moments. This is one of those games that if it was an island game, it would have been really fun to be completely dialed into, because I think like everybody kind of had their moments here. From a fantasy perspective, we have a lot to talk about with the Chargers offense, notably what happened in the backfield. So in the first quarter, Chris, it was a 50-50 split for the running back touches for Amari Hampton and Najee Harris. That kind of started to continue into the second half, in the second quarter, but into the second quarter, Najee Harris goes down with a non-contact injury. As we're recording this right now, Jim Harbaugh just announced that it is a torn Achilles for Najee Harris, so he's done for the season. Amari Hampton then got like a nice runway of opportunity here in this one with Najee Harris out, unfortunately. And Najee had a couple of nice plays in this game, specifically as a rusher, 4.7 yards per carry, just steadily kind of being what I thought he'd be, which is more of a steadying presence while Hampton hit the home runs. Well, again, Hampton comes in here and not just as a rusher where he took 19 carries, 70 yards, and a touchdown. He also chipped in with 6 for 59 on 7 targets as a receiver. So it's been quite a journey with Amari and Hampton, but it looks like he is right now going to return to being like a near every snap player for this Chargers offense. We'll see what happens in future weeks, but no other Chargers back recorded a carry after Najee Harris went down.
Right. And so for anybody that had been somewhat disappointed over the first couple of weeks, maybe sat him this week just to see how things shook out, especially going up against the Broncos defense, you had to at least feel a bit more confident moving forward now with the touches consolidating around him. I mean, to your point, those 7 targets will allow him to at least have a steady floor from a week in, week out basis. And especially with the way Justin Herbert's playing right now, my goodness, that the touchdown throw to Keenan Allen, I mean, that was one of like the sickest throws I've probably seen like at least today. I mean, for not compared to like the previous 2 weeks, but for today, that throw to Keenan Allen is one of the reasons why I'm very optimistic about this Chargers passing game moving forward, because it's not just the fact they're dialing up more passing plays, with Herbert being the one to deliver a lot of that. I mean, especially with now Amari Hampton, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, QJ looking also really good today as well. I mean, yeah, it's wheels up for Amari Hampton moving forward for sure.
Yeah. So on Justin Herbert, like I mentioned, this was a game where I thought the Broncos defense absolutely had its moments. According to NFL Pro, he was pressured, was Justin Herbert, on 54.7% of his dropbacks and was 10 of 23 under pressure. Like, they made it hard on a passing game that's the basis of their unit. At the same time, and when they blitzed, 7 of 12 for just 100 yards and the interception and a sack. But at the same time, Herbert gets them just enough to win the game, gets them down there for the field goal to, again, win this divisional game. So you mentioned that touchdown throw to Keenan Allen was absolutely sick. I think a big talking point, and I know this is going to be a big talking point because people were asking me during the game, is Chargers wide receiver Ladd McConkey, who has 7 targets, 4 catches for 41 yards. But you mentioned it, 10 targets for QJ. I feel like we keep waiting for this like rug pull moment where QJ just turns back to the old QJ, but so far so good for him through 3 weeks. Keenan Allen is legit. He led the team with 11 targets. Are you concerned? I don't listen. Ladd McConkey's not the wide receiver 3 on this team. Like that just because the production has been that way, that's not how this works. Like, from a concept standpoint, he's still being set up for big plays. They just haven't quite connected yet. What's your level of concern on Ladd McConkey right now amid a passing game that is absolutely awesome, but also much more spread out than we thought?
I think that's the point that I'm more concerned about. It's not about McConkey falling behind or, to your point earlier, him being the wide receiver 3. It's just more now that there are more targets in this offense that are producing just as efficiently as he would if he were the number 1, like in 2024. Because now with Quentin Johnston making that step forward that the Chargers hoped when they drafted him, and also Keenan Allen back in the fold, this now becomes something where the pass volume can support 2, maybe 3 wide receivers on a week in, week out basis. Because like 4 for 41, it's not really what you wanted considering where McConkey was drafted at. But in some weeks, he might be the one getting 6 for 89, or he might be the one 765 for in a touch like Keenan Allen just had, and it might be the other 2. So because it has been the first few weeks of just middling production, we at least know that this is a pass first offense. We know that this is one of the better quarterbacks throwing the ball. And now let's just wait for the production to come, because the usage is still there. To your point, he is being set up, and where he runs routes and the types of routes that he runs are going to be more effective in weeks to come. It's just that the production hasn't been there just yet for him to show up in the box score like we wanted to. So I would almost look at this as a buy low opportunity, to be quite honest with you. If folks are a little bit disappointed about where things have come up for their, second, third roundish pick in Ladd McConkey, I'd be looking to try and make a deal if I could.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Like, he's definitely going to be someone that people are pissed about right now. And like, I don't know if I don't know if, Pat Surtain was covering him on like a vast majority of the routes. So like he traveled with him. I haven't seen any of that stuff just yet. My guess is no, that didn't happen. And I feel like this is an unsatisfactory answer, Chris, but the reality is, like, he's a good player. This is a good passing environment. He's probably just not going to be like this quiet over the course of the season. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no great advanced analytics answer to any of that, but it's just like, that's usually how this stuff goes. And it's a 3-week sample size. And by the end of the year, like, I think it will be, here's the thing though, it's just going to be a lot closer and a lot tighter between these 3 wide receivers than anybody was projecting heading into the season. And because of that, like, I do think that Ladd McConkey might go down as a small loss if you took him in the second round. I don't think he's going to kill you or anything, but if it feels bad right now, and I kind of think that actually the move there might be like, if people are going to overreact to this, and it's probably just going to be one season, but one season with Keenan Allen here, he might be like a nice buy low in Dynasty, but I am a little bit, well, I'm sure we'll talk about this in the panic meter tomorrow. I'm a little bit concerned on Ladd McConkey returning like second round value if that is where you took him in fantasy this year.
Yeah, and let's see how things shake out for them next week, because I believe they're the Giants in week 4. So that might be the get right spot for somebody that operates more on the interior parts of the field. So I would say let's give it one more week. And if it continues to be the case and it's still the Keenan Allen and QJ show in week 4, then I think we're a full blown 10 out of 10 panic meter for Ladd McConkey.
Let's talk about the Broncos here, the team that lost this game. Bo Nix in this one completed 14 of 25 pass attempts for 153 yards and a touchdown against the Chargers. He was 11 of 14 on passes under 10 air yards, but really struggled pushing the ball downfield. Just 3 of 9 on passes over 10 air yards. He did have a touchdown, the one completion to Cortland Sutton, but there was a lot of misses from Bo Nix down the field on this one. And like, that's kind of my takeaway from this Broncos offense so far this year, Chris, is I just feel like the training wheels are still on here for Bo Nix, which part of me is like, I want to see him be allowed to let it rip a little bit more. But then again, when he lets it rip in this game, like, the passes are off the mark. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, and it's tough defense. Obviously the Chargers make it difficult to play against them, but nevertheless, like, I was expecting a second year leap from Bo Nix and like a second year leap from Sean Payton and Bo Nix together. And it just hasn't really happened yet.
And we keep seeing these flashes, like, to your point, he's got the long touchdown to Cortland Sutton. That was like plus 50 yards or something along those lines. He's got a couple of shots. Like, I think he took a deep shot to Marvin Mims that was like almost there too. Yes. It's like he's got those plays in his bag, and we know that, but they're just so few and far in between after a rookie campaign where I know that the first month and a half was something of a struggle, but then afterwards, those things started to show up more often. And that was really before we saw a lot of those guys start to rotate in more often than not. And this is also, remember, this is a game that we didn't have Evan Ingram here. And I know he's only been with the team for a couple of weeks, but even having like some sort of presence across the middle of the field, that might've made things a little bit easier for him. But still, I'm with you in that it just feels like there's just some piece missing out of this offense for Bo Nix. And I think there's just something there that Sean Payton is just kind of holding him back in a sense. Whereas after they get past that, maybe it's just something he's not seeing in practice or something along those lines, that we might get to see him be a bit more aggressive and also be able to, I guess, find get more in rhythm with his pass catchers. Because you look at Cortland Sutton, boundary receiver. You look at Troy Franklin. We were talking about him earlier today, a guy that can win with his speed down the field. And so it's like, if you have a quarterback in Bo Nix that, yes, in college he was more of that short area field guy, but you have 2 wide receivers that typically operate downfield, there has to be some sort of give and take. There has to be some sort of compromise, and maybe we're just not seeing that realized on the field yet. So I'm hoping that they find some sort of compromise in the passing game, but it just doesn't seem to be there yet.
Yeah, and speaking of in the passing game, you mentioned Cortland Sutton. He was awesome in this game, reestablished himself as obviously the number one guy in this offense. But while Troy Franklin didn't blow up in the box score, he was still on the field for 84.4% of the routes, which that's big. Like, that's almost more important than the playing time, right? Than the production. Like, he was still there. Out on the field, and that's the first time anyone's done that in consecutive games for the Broncos the last 2 seasons with Bo Nix under center. So if Troy Franklin obviously is a guy that like people picked up and they might drop after seeing the numbers, but against weaker competition, we might see some better moments for Troy Franklin. So I thought that was at least encouraging if you're looking for him as somebody that might continue to have some moments this season. Let's get to the final game here that we really care about. Jaguars 17, Texans 10. Chris, if I was to describe this word in one sentence, it would be legitimately, this was a game no one wanted to win. Whether it I watched a lot of this game because like there's a lot of important players from a fantasy standpoint in this game, and I expected this to be kind of like a more enjoyable watch than it was, but especially late in this game, man, it was like CJ Stroud throws a pick, Trevor Lawrence throws a pick, Nico Collins fumbles, it was just one thing after another. So let's start with the Jaguars here. What did you think watching them in this one?
Another concerning performance for Travis Hunter. We talked about it earlier today that if you have him on your roster, you have to bench him until we see more opportunities laid out for him. And still just 2 targets on the day. I mean, playing behind the other guys that were productive in their week 2 matchup against the Bengals. Brian Thomas Jr., 6 targets. Parker Washington, 11 targets. Brenton Strange, 7 targets. And seeing Hunter's name and his usage centered around guys like Hunter Long, even like Diami Brown had more targets than Travis Hunter did. And Brown hurt his shoulder and he was out for almost half the game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
So that is my concern for Travis Hunter, where this is a guy that they spent quite a bit of draft capital to acquire, and seeing him not really having a large impact on the offense. And also, I mean, we'll probably talk about Brian Thomas Jr. here a little bit. That was my biggest takeaway from here, is that I have a decent amount of concern. Like we were talking panic meter earlier about some of the other plays that have gone on throughout the early parts of week 3. I mean, Travis Hunter, if you have him, your panic meter has to be all the way to the right at this point.
Oh, he is absolutely like unplayable right now. He plays 80 total snaps according to Pro Football Focus, 37 on defense, 43 on defense, 37 on offense. And it just feels like they don't quite know what to do with him yet, which, like, this is one of those actions speak louder than words. They said a lot of big, bold things about like their plans for, and like the plans on offense are just like so whatever. I mean, he runs a route on 63% of the dropbacks. He has one really nice quick out route that immediately, like, Trevor Lawrence gets the ball right on him. It's accurate. He runs 21 yards with a lot of yak in that one. It's just like, yeah, let him run like a real route, throw him the football and see what happens. But that was his lone reception of the day, because like Parker Washington gets targeted, and I like Parker Washington. I think he's like a nice role player. You know, I think he's been a nice role player. But 11 targets, 4 catches for 34 yards for Parker Washington in this one. You know, Diami Brown exits the game. It just, like, they've got to figure something out with Travis Hunter. They've got to do, because the offense needs something else. Like, that's the thing, is they need him. And I loved Hunter as a prospect. Everybody knows that. I still am very, very bullish on him long term. He obviously is a unique case. He's not like a normal receiver that went second overall in the draft. He's a guy that is trying to play both ways. There's a lot on his plate, and I think you can feel that when he's out there, Chris, because somebody's like kind of constantly telling him what to do on plays. There's some miscommunications here and there. Like, that stuff's got to get ironed out. I think it will get ironed out over the course of the season, but it's a part of what makes him, to your point, like bottom line fantasy football perspective, is just not a guy that you can play right now. And I'd be more concerned about that if, like, I wasn't still really concerned about the number 1 wide receiver on this team. This is another day, Chris, full of some unsavory moments from Brian Thomas Jr. At least a couple drops in this game. Now, he had one nice catch and run play late in this game that ultimately puts them into a nice position. So that was good to see. He finishes the game, though, with 55 yards, and it's kind of the same stuff. Some misses against zone coverage, drops. He's not where he's supposed to be. It just, I don't know. Like, this is not a game. Like Liam Cohen said, he's really proud of the way that he finished. Like, hopefully that play is this is exactly what I said, what Cohen said. He should take confidence from that play and like carry it forward. I'm hoping that's the case, but everything before that was the same exact stuff that left us concerned last week. So it's a tough Houston defense, but Derek Stingley missed a big chunk of this game with an abdomen injury. So it's not as if he was being shadowed by Derek Stingley. So I don't know. Still just a lot of concerns with the top 2 guys theoretically in this Jaguars passing game.
Yeah, and this was the same Brian Thomas Jr. that was competing with the rest of the league from a wide receiver standpoint in almost every conceivable metric, and that was with Mac Jones being under center for most of his time. So I'm just wondering what changed between his rookie season and what we're seeing now for the first 3 weeks. Yes, the scheme has now started to change a bit now with Liam Cohen calling the shots there, but I can't really pin it. I don't want to pin it on his rapport with Trevor Lawrence. They had most of the offseason because Lawrence was throwing once they got into like the back end of like earlier parts of the summer, and also obviously throughout all of training camp. And I don't want to pin it on Liam Cohen because we're seeing production from the other wide receivers that are there. So I'm with you, and I'm also with Liam Cohen that just maybe there are these small moments that he just needs to get his confidence back, because again, after his performance in week 2 and now seeing this, I saw the catch. I mean, that 40+ yarder that he got, and a lot of people were saying, oh, that saves his day. I was like, well, it kind of saves his day. I would prefer it if it got in for a touchdown from a fantasy standpoint, but okay, I guess if a 46 yarder is what's now going to propel him into being the same guy that was top 5, top 6 in yards per route run, also top 10 in explosive catch rate. Okay. But I thought that going into the season, we were going to get more of that right out of the gate, just seeing where he was at by the back end of 2024. So little concern. I would say panic meter wise, rather, maybe a five or 6 out of 10, somewhere in there, especially if we get another performance like that in week 4.
Well, the Jaguars were not to be outdone in terms of, like I said, not wanting to win this game by the Houston Texans, who now dropped to 0-3 on the season. And yes, there's pass protection worries. It wasn't a perfect game from Nico Collins, although he got over 100 yards. He had like a drop and he lost a fumble that was really killer in this game. But he still gets out of it alive from a really good, actually, from a fantasy standpoint, his best game of the season. But nobody else really does much in the receiving game. Christian Kirk, second among wide receivers and routes, played the slot, but still neither rookie gets involved. Both Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel under 15 routes in this game. But like, I came away from this one thinking like, there was a couple of just really concerning plays for CJ Stroud where like, he's like, I think the thing I'm worried about, Chris, is that like the pressure that he's been under, literally, not, like not figurative pressure, but literal pressure on the field, has gotten to him over the last, 12 plus months. Like, it just, to me, I see a guy that is like always constantly thinking about where heat is coming from, and like the accuracy, like what his superpower was ball placement in his rookie season. I think that's become like something that's withered over the last 12 months, which is definitely a concern for me.
Yeah, because I remember even when the offensive line issues were starting to pick up for the Texans last year, you get them in obvious passing situations and Stroud would just make magic, man. Like he would turn a 3rd and 8 into a 1st and 10, just like the best of them, because of that ball placement that you mentioned. And that was without Christian Kirk on the field. And that was without any of the 2 wide receiver rookies that they drafted. And so seeing this now, another game where over 30% pressure rate, I mean, he's hit again like 4 or 5 times in this game. I'm kind of with you where a lot of the hits that he's taken and the toll that it's starting to take on not just his body, but also just how he processes the field and the defense pre-snap, and also how he tries to approach it once the snap has been delivered to him. I have to think that there is some sort of, I would say, gap or it's diminishing how he played the game in his first couple of seasons, to the point where until they get some better protection around him and until the wide receiver room also starts to improve, I mean, this might just be the situation that we're in. That's it. The only other takeaway that I got from the Texans passing game is just, if Christian Kirk's out there on your waiver wire, maybe put in a claim for him. It was good to see him like just right off the rip, 8 targets from the slot and completely dusted the wide receiver, the other rookies from a routes run standpoint. So if he's out there in a PPR league, I would say try and pick him up. But otherwise, I'm not all too interested in any other pass catchers associated with the Texans right now.
All right, that is going to do it for the games we care about. Now let's get into the games we sort of care about, which we transition to a perfect game here. 49ers 16, Cardinals 15. Chris, I come out of this one feeling like I don't even know if either of these teams are any good. Now, in fairness, on the 49ers side, they're playing with their backup quarterback, and Mac Jones picked up some kind of lower body injury late in this game as well, which, like, Mac Jones is already not a guy that's going to be able to create at all, and now you're hampering him from a lower body perspective. That's certainly not ideal, but still, man, it was just, and I think they've got a lot of injuries, so maybe this is more of a Cardinals take, but if you want, what we wanted out of the 49ers offense was Christian McCaffrey continued to Christian McCaffrey things. That's absolutely what happened here. He was a monster with 15 freaking targets as a receiver. 15 targets.
What are we doing?
A receiver is just nuts. But more importantly, for nobody but me, Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot of pop this week, but not a target earner. Well, he goes out and gets 11 targets in this game. So, including a couple of just absolutely sick catches. I said this during the game. It felt like at one point I was like, have the Niners even had the ball in this game? Like, every time I'm looking up, it's the Cardinals. And they only had a 25-minute time of possession in this game. So I guess I was right about that. But every time I look up, I'm like, well, there's Ricky Pearsall making another sick play down the field. So no Juwan Jennings in this one. Obviously, we know no George Kittle, no Brandon Ayuk, all that stuff. But encouraging game from Ricky Pearsall, and Christian McCaffrey continues to do his thing.
Yeah, and that's where I would say I expected Well, I didn't expect 15 targets for Christian McCaffrey, but just seeing him used as a receiver in that vein, we did expect that coming into the season, just given how much he was used when he was still with Carolina. And of course, after he came over to San Francisco, his receiving prowess has been one of the key things that keeping him in the early rounds from an ADP standpoint. But Ricky Pearsall, my goodness, I think we talked about it last week on the recap show. Some of the throws over the middle of the field that Mac Jones was just ripping to Ricky Pearsall last week, that still seemed to be the case here. But now with that aggressiveness actually being targeted more on the inner, like farther downfield than last week, you see that type of route running skill set that Pearsall was, that the 49ers lauded when they drafted Pearsall. So I'm more encouraged about what he can be in this offense. Let's think about it. Once they get Brandon Ayuk back, and let's say once they get George Kittle back, I mean, this could be a fully operational battle station, my man. And with Pearsall showing off what he can right now, and this is, of course, against the Cardinals defense, it is somewhat banged up. But from a route running standpoint, he slots in really well with where George Kittle operates and also where Brandon Ayuk operates. So I'm sure that Kyle Shanahan has to be at least kind of licking his chops to see what this receiving core looks like once everybody's back and healthy.
Right. I'm with you that I'm excited to see this group all together because I think they could be a really, really, really sick offense if everybody is fully healthy, which probably not going to be the case for Ayuk, and we'll see what George Kittle looks like when he gets back. On the other side of it, like I said, the Cardinals, bro, I have no idea if this team is any good coming out of this game. Unfortunately, James Conner suffers what looks like a significant injury. He was carted off in this one, so Trey Benson is absolutely – that looked pretty bad. I don't have any official update on that right now as we're recording this live, but Trey Benson led the team with 10 carries for 42 yards, 3 for 9 as a receiver as well. Following James Conner's departure due to an ankle injury, this is from Jacob Gibbs. Trey Benson played 74% of the snaps, so he's definitely someone who's going to have to step up because the run game has been very hit or miss for this team so far this season, and definitely same for the passing game. Kyler was Kyler in this game, but, to be fair, like, this is one of those not easy to defend games from Marvin Harrison Jr., where he just continues to make mistakes with how he attacks the football. Like, I can sit here and point out all these routes over the middle of the field where he's open and Kyler just doesn't pull the trigger. Then again, you're going to put like an inexplicable drop on the field. And there was a great deep shot from Kyle. That was bad. That was just like wide open. Nobody's there. And then same thing, like, there was the play that ultimately took them to the 1 yard line because of a PI on Zay Jones, and then, failed goal line appearance. And then Trey McBride gets a 1 yard touchdown. So shout out to the Trey McBride bros. Like, Harrison catches a touchdown on like kind of his helmet and then loses it going to the ground. Cause just like, there's a big weakness in his game. And like, you were hoping it was going to get better from year 1 to year 2. And it just really hasn't, because technically he's so technically precise as a route runner, and he's such a mess technique wise at the catch point. And this is where it leaves you with, like, you only get 6 targets on the day and you turn those into 44 yards.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough part is people will, of course, remember the drops and what could have been for him. And that's it. The only thing that we as analysts can probably say in order to appease them or maybe say that better days are ahead is, he was 6 targets and Trey McBride while leading the team with 8. I mean, it's just 2 fewer for Marvin Harrison. So he's still the wide receiver 1. Air yard standpoint, he's going to be up there. And so the opportunities are still going to be there for him. But if these are the things that are the inefficiencies are still going to be there as a part of this passing game, whether it's coming from Kyler's side, not wanting to pull the trigger, or even Harrison having some of those drops, we're always going to have, at least in the back of our minds, that even in the better matchups moving forward for them and looking at their upcoming schedule, and they do play the Seahawks, but then they do have like Tennessee like coming up, got Dallas in week 9. So it's like there are other matchups where they might be able to take advantage of some of these weaker secondaries. But even in those matchups, are we really expecting Kyler and Marv to be that wide receiver, like QB1, wide receiver 1 combo that we hope for them? I don't really see it at this point, especially with some of the mistakes we saw earlier today.
No, it just kind of is what it is. Like, these guys are a weird fit for each other, and like we always look for like one culprit here. Like, this is Kyler's fault, or this is Drew Petzing's fault, or this is Marvin Harrison Jr.'s fault. And like, it's a mix, and especially with the quarterback and wide receiver. And it's the same thing with Trevor Lawrence and BTJ. Like, people they so badly, I mean, I saw it on Twitter today, like, they so badly want to blame Trevor Lawrence. And I'm not defending Trevor Lawrence. I'm only saying that you can't just blame him. Like, there are two people at fault when things are not going wrong in both of those situations, and like that's where we are right now.
Life
Speaking
lessons
of a lot
from
of
Matt
things,
Harmon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying here, man. I'm trying to make sense. Week 3 of the NFL season. I don't know if I'm making any salient real life points, but I'm at least trying to talk a little ball here. Next game up. I mean, I guess there's some football to talk in this game. That might be a generous term for it. Steelers 21, Patriots 14. I mean, the key things to know in this game, Chris, I think, are that the Patriots, have like a weird fumbling issue. They fumble. they just fumbled a ton. 3 combined fumbles between Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. So shout out to Travion Henderson, bros. You got a 50% share of the running back touches. Just didn't do anything with it. And then on the Steelers side of it, 6 players got a target on the team, just 6, which is that's very concentrated. And yet no one cleared 35 yards receiving. So what a bizarre game from a fantasy football perspective. Chris, did you learn anything in this one?
I don't want I want nothing to do with the Patriots passing game moving forward. I don't care if it's Stephon Diggs or Kayshon Boutte or whatever shadow realm that Pop Douglas is probably going to get sent to after that 4th and 1 play. It's not going to go well for him.
Dude, he did the full Deontay Johnson. You never do the full Deontay Johnson.
Just going backwards and also then trying to scamper forward. It's like, my brother in Christ, just fall forward, man. Like, that's all you had to do. That's all you had to do, man. But we're not players. We're not out there on the field. We don't have 2 defenders rushing at us. So I'm not one to say that I wouldn't react in the similar fashion. But it's just, we see that and we're like, just go that way. But still, both passing games are not ones that I want to have a ton of exposure to, because we just talked about the Patriots and their spread out game. Same thing for the Steelers as well. And 4 targets for DK Metcalf, 5 for Calvin Austin on the season so far. Metcalf only leads that whole pass catching crew just by 2. How can we reliably project any level of production with this when this is more of a whomever that's so spread out amongst all of the pass catchers here? I mean, Hunter Henry had 11 targets in this game. What am I supposed to do with that especially after last week where it was Austin Hooper getting involved more so than Hunter Henry? So I'm pushing this more as I just want to look at, say, the core pieces. Drake May, Travion Henderson, potentially now with the Ramondre Stevenson fumbles. And then, of course, on the flip side of that, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a bit more, Jaylen Warren for the Steelers, looking at how much he was used this week after we saw essentially nothing from Caleb Johnson and just more out of whether it was Warren or Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren, 83% of the running back touches. So, he's probably the guy you feel the best about from this offense. Because, to your point about DK Metcalf, through 3 games, he's only been targeted on 18.5% of his routes, which that's been consistent. It's not like he has one big spike week. It's just every week it's been right around 18%. 135 receiving yards, 45 per game. It just he's gotten the touchdown, the ultimate touchdown deodorant season so far. But yeah, he's not a funnel target player. And every week I log in to do the rankings, the weekly rankings, and I'm not saying I'm any good at these rankings or anything like that. And really, it's not my biggest focus in the world. But every week I log in and all right, start with consensus. Let's take DK Metcalf down from wide receiver 15 or whatever and drag him down to just go ahead and drag him down to the 20s or whatever. So yeah, that's step number 1. Then you go from there with your wide receiver rankings. Let's go to the next game here. Buccaneers 29, Jets 27. This one snuck up on folks. The Bucs led this game 23-6 with just under 6 minutes left in the third quarter. I honestly was like, all right, guess I don't have to pay too much attention to this one. But then the Jets came kind of roaring back. Once again, theme of the day on a special teams play. That was a big part of how they got back in this one. On the Bucs side of things, I think we have to update the wide receiver room. Mike Evans is getting an MRI on his hamstring that took him out of this game. Todd Bowles said later he was not sure how long he will be out. Emeka Egbuka was on something of a pitch count, as we kind of heard that might be the case. Ran around on 63% of the dropbacks, but 8 targets, 6 catches for 85 yards. I will say this. I think I've mentioned this on the show a couple times. My personal trainer is a Bucs fan. Randomly enough, he's a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. I've said we've been bemoaning every session, well, there goes another Buccaneer. On IR, Cody Mock going on IR, Tristan Wirfs, when the hell is he going to be back? Jalen Miller, we're just constantly talking about how this team's so banged up. And I said in passing on our Friday session. I was like, and Mike Evans, he's due for his annual hamstring injury anytime.
Oh.
And well, oh my God, I'm laughing because I'm laughing through the tears because we'll see. I might have to find a new personal trainer after that one. He might not have me back on Wednesday. We'll see. I'll keep people. I know everyone cares about that, so we'll really keep the update there. But yeah, Mike Evans once again hamstring issues as the Bucs just continue to win games but get injuries basically every single week.
And so here's the shift so I'll say this. So here's my recommendation for folks. Whether or not you had Mike Evans on your roster, if you are looking for some wide receiver help this week, I'd say throw a dart at Sterling Shepard, which I know probably warms the cockles of your heart, Harmon. Yeah, seeing him mix in for about 5 targets in this particular matchup. But it's not just the fact that he might be the next man up or start to be a larger part of the rotation, but a potential shift in how the Bucs approach their passing game. So still seeing about like a third of his dropbacks for Baker Mayfield facing pressure. 50% passing success rate. Well, that's because he was throwing faster. His average time to throw was about 2.3 seconds in this matchup against the Jets. So if now we're going to see more quicker passes, shorter area passes, that fits with a wide receiver like Sterling Shepard. We know that how he can operate in the short to intermediate parts of the field. So I'm not just throwing out Shepard as a guy that you might want to put in the back of your minds for waivers just because of the volume standpoint or potential volume with Evans missing a game or two, or it might even be longer. I've seen some of the Twitter docs talking about a stint on IR for Mike Evans, but still with the way that they're going to have to operate this passing game with the number of injuries to their offensive line, seeing more quick game concepts from Baker Mayfield might be in the cards for him moving forward. So I think I kind of like Sterling Shepard here, at least in week 4 and beyond.
I love that analysis by you. I basically second everything you said there. That's a great way of looking at it. And I think you're probably right about that. In addition to like more passing game work for Bucky Irving, who touched the ball 29 times in this game. But yeah, man, dude, he's such a beast. And obviously the rushing efficiency is not going to be what it was with that offensive line being as banged up as it is. But yeah, I mean, you're so right, dude. The fact Sterling Shepard is 10 years into his NFL career after all the injuries he suffered. And
he's still out there doing it, man.
Dude, making critical plays for a 3-0 team, like, you're right. Nothing warms my cold, dark heart more than Sterling Shepard making critical plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the year 2025 with his boy Baker Mayfield. I freaking love it. Honestly, don't have much to say about the Jets side of things here other than Garrett Wilson gets out of this with another massive target share because Tyrod Taylor kind of did what you want from him, which is just keep the train on the tracks, but just 5.77 air yards per target. So getting the ball out quick in the short area to Garrett Wilson was the priority in this one. And the backfield was definitely a little bit more split up in this one, I think, than it had been in recent weeks. So that is something to track here, as that might be, maybe a wandering eye from Aaron Glenn as the head coach there. But let's move to the next game here. Browns 13, Packers 10. No, I'm not drunk. No, I didn't misspeak. That is right. The team that everybody's like, oh boy, best team in the NFL, best defense in the NFL, maybe number 1 of the power rankings, Green Bay Packers. They lose on a last-second field goal to the Cleveland freaking Browns, Chris Allen. The big story on offense in this one, Joe Flacco, 3.9 yards per attempt. He struggled under the pressure. But Quinshon Judkins' consolidation of power in the backfield, 79% of the touches. Dylan Sampson, the only other running back to get a carry with just one, and Jerome Ford mixed in for 4 targets as well here. So Judkins had some moments in this one too, 94 yards on the ground. Definitely, if you were playing him in fantasy and you've got him, like you stashed him through all the domestic violence stuff like that in the offseason, or you picked him off waivers, it's just he looks like a guy that's the centerpiece of their offense right now.
Yeah, from a opportunity standpoint, looks like he's filling in that Nick Chubb role that a lot of folks kind of penciled in for him when the Browns drafted him. That seems to come to fruition here, especially in a game where going up against the Packers defense and how limiting they've been over the past 2 weeks prior, not just from a rushing standpoint, also receiving standpoint. It was like, okay, well, I would at least wait another week, especially after last week where it was kind of a split between him, Jerome Ford, and Sampson. But seeing this level of opportunity for Judkins, if you've been holding on to him, even if you start him in this matchup because you might have been stuck at the running back position, hats off to you for making that leap of faith. But now moving forward, I would say if you have Dylan Sampson, he's probably a guy that you might want to least look at making space for trying to pick up somebody else and kicking him to the waiver wire. Same thing with Jerome Ford, because the level of opportunity seems to be there for Judkins and not anybody else right now in the Browns backfield.
On the Packers side of things, I mean, the Browns have a good defense. Like, we can't forget about that. And they just slammed the door shut on Josh Jacobs. Absolutely looked like they were really going to shut down that run game, and they did. And Jordan Love just couldn't make it happen under a lot of pressure behind a banged up offensive line. Like, we focused a lot on the Tucker Kraft injury going into the game because, of course, like, we are the Tucker Kraft podcast, but Zach Tom was also injured last week. He played in this game, but rotated with Jordan Morgan, and like that was a little bit of an issue. And of course, you've got Myles Garrett on the other side of things. It's going to be tough. And that Browns run defense, as we're showing on the screen right now, has been money so far through this season. Like, they talked a big game. Obviously, Chase Brown shutting him down. Whatever, we'll talk about that. The Bengals run game stinks out loud. But Derrick Henry, they shut him down in week 2 after talking a lot of trash. They made it happen, and then 16 for 30 for Josh Jacobs, and there just wasn't much in the pass game from Jordan Love. Made some mistakes, was under pressure a lot. It just, like, I don't know, this Packers passing game just wasn't up to the task against a pretty good Browns defense.
No, and this was also a Packers team that typically prefers to run on the early downs, like sitting at around neutral from a pass rate over expectation standpoint. So if Josh Jacobs isn't getting there and getting the Packers into shorter down and distances once they get into obvious passing situations, I mean, today Jacobs just a 15.4% rushing success rate on early downs, and that translated to Jordan Love having to operate from about 7.1 yards per attempt once they got into third and fourth down. So it's like, if that's the type of situation that Love found himself, whereas in week 1, just like between 5 and 6 yards when they came up on third and obvious passing situations, that's the key difference there. So if you stop what they're trying to do from a rushing standpoint on the early downs, and then setting up Jordan Love for some of those trick plays or like the stuff that he tries to do, the Aaron Rodgers impression of him throwing off his back foot and hitting some of his wide receivers downfield like he did in weeks 1 and week 2, it becomes harder if you have to throw the ball a little bit farther. And without Jaden Reed there, and with Tucker Kraft seemingly a little bit banged up, I mean, that does make it all the more, I would say, pertinent for guys like Dontavian Wicks to show up, Romeo Doubs to show up, and really didn't get as much out of them that like we expected to, especially against the Browns secondary. So I would say it's just a tough out having to go up against that Browns defense, which can be tough. But again, I don't think the Packers are in too much of a chance of losing out on controlling the NFC North as of right now.
Yeah, legit just might be the 2 best defenses in the league. Browns, Packers. So it's like, you come away with 23 combined points. There are going to be days like that at the office. Last game that we sort of care about here, and we only stick this in, it was a major blowout, but big takeaways because it was the backup quarterback bowl. Vikings 48, Chris's Bengals 10 points in this one. Now, the Vikings offense didn't have to do much. 5 turnovers from the defense, 2 interceptions, 3 lost fumbles, 5 total fumbles, and 2 touchdowns from that defense, both of which came from Isaiah Rodgers in this one. But the big note on offense, besides the fact that, yes, Carson Wentz started a game, becomes yet another journeyman quarterback to win a game under Kevin O'Connell. But Jordan Mason, 76% share of the running back touches in the first 3 quarters. I was one of the people, you mentioned this earlier, that benched Amari Hampton this week, my one Amari Hampton team, but I benched him for Jordan Mason and Ricky Pearsall, so I feel okay. I feel okay about it. Especially because, man, Jordan Mason, this is exactly like what you hoped to get out of trading for him and drafting him in your fantasy team.
Yeah, I mean, just on that side of the ball, I mean, exactly what you wanted to see out of it. Yeah, Xavier Scott mixed in for about 8 to 10 carries, somewhere in there, but that was really more so like once the game was out of hand and they had like a tight grip on the scoreboard there against the Bengals. So from just a carry standpoint, and also seeing him, like, the only part that I am somewhat concerned about is not seeing a ton of receiving work there for Jordan Mason. The hope would be that he would capture both of that work with Aaron Jones out. But still, when your team is up by over 30 freaking points by halftime, there's not much that you can take away from that, at least from that opportunity portion not being there for him. So my assumption would be in the next couple of weeks, we should see that start to tick back in his favor. We shouldn't expect to see as much to, like, what was it? Josh Oliver caught the first touchdown. Not really expecting that to happen every single week, just because tight ends seem to get over on my Bengals week in and week out. So I think the opportunity you're happy about, and it should continue to evolve, and he should be that team's running back one moving forward.
Yeah, this note from NFL Pro just on the Vikings passing game I thought was interesting. Carson Wentz threw a quick pass that they defined that as under 2.5 seconds on 60% of his pass attempts. He was 9 of 12 with 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. Weeks 1 and 2, J.J. McCarthy attempted a quick pass on just 17.1%. And that wasn't because I don't think that's because they're not looking to do quick game. I think coming into this year they want it to be more of like a steady Eddie quick game type of passing offense. I just think McCarthy hasn't read the field fast enough and hasn't gotten those throws out. He's still developing. I'm not out on JJ McCarthy forever, but this is just hey, a veteran quarterback who's been around the block, who is not a perfect player by any means. And obviously this is not a good defense, but still he can just execute the offense for the Minnesota Vikings. Let's talk about your Bengals, Chris. We talked about the receivers up at the top. I think there will be better days for the receivers and for Jake Browning when they don't go against Brian Flores. I think people are going to overreact to them going against Minnesota and just how bad it was in the passing game. The thing I am concerned about, Chase Brown turned his 10 carries into 3 yards in this game. It is the Bengals might legitimately have the worst run game in the league, and that is going to be problematic with having a backup quarterback in there.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about how much pressure Jake Browning was seeing on over 50% of his dropbacks, and those offensive line woes continue to happen for Chase Brown. I mean, on the early down runs so far this season, he's been less than productive from a running back standpoint. I mean, how often he's been able to actually see open lanes, actually being able to produce on those carries. I mean, it's been very limiting from the offense, and their switch to try and incorporate Chase Brown on some of the early down runs versus having Joe Burrow drop back and pass. That's what has set them up to have longer down and distance once they get into second and third. So I'm concerned about, not just off of how the entire offense is going to look, but just from a schematic standpoint, can they get any more production out of this run game? I know Zach Taylor talked about it after the game, that's something that they need to fix. Well, I mean, brother, your Dalton Reisner also went down with a calf injury in this game. So one more lineman that they have to, a lineman injury that they're going to have to worry about. So if they're going to have to shuffle more things on the offensive line, how are they going to fix it? So I don't see any answers. The only thing that I'm seeing right now is just more problems for the Bengals offense.
Again, we'll see what it looks like when they go against maybe some lesser competition, because this Vikings defense is very, very hard to play against. But that is going to do it for the games we sort of care about. Now let's get into the games that could have been an email. And we've got 4 very email-y games to talk through here, starting with Seahawks 44, New Orleans Saints 13. My one-ish sentence summary for this game, Chris, is special teams and the Seahawks mainstays shine in this one. Kenneth Walker, 17 of 18 running back touches in the first 3 quarters. JSN has the flu. He goes 5 for 96 and a touchdown on 6 targets. Meanwhile, the Saints fantasy scam continues. 14 targets, 10 catches for Chris Olave, and Juwan Johnson even gets out of here with 6 for 51.
Talked about it earlier this morning. Chris Olave's usage from the slot would have been something of a benefit for going up against the Seahawks secondary that was going to be without a couple of the defenders. So good to see him still working in as this being productive. In a PPR standpoint, you'll take that 10 for 57. And also Juwan Johnson, 8 targets for him as well. So not even in a game where they were have to play catch up and playing from behind, seeing Johnson still being involved in the passing game was also pretty good to see. So he's got to be a tight end mainstay moving forward. So at least we're not looking for a ton from Spencer Rattler. Just get the ball to your pass catchers, and he's clearly doing that after 3 weeks.
Next game up here, Commanders 41, Raiders 24. Washington does not lose any steam with Marcus Mariota under center. We also got some updates on some of their players there. We'll get to that in a second. The other side of it, though, the Raiders, I think, have some tough questions to answer on offense. Commanders have Marcus Mariota. Doesn't really matter. They keep on rolling. Meanwhile, the Raiders, they have they got 3 touchdowns from Trey Tucker, but they scored 24 points, and some of their stars are very quiet once again.
Yeah, Trey Tucker, University of Cincinnati graduate, my alma mater. So good to see him still out there producing. But I would say the one thing that I'm still at least taking to heart is how much Jacoby Myers is operating from the interior, still having those layup targets from Geno Smith, 72.5% snap rate from the slot, still just 4 targets. So I'm still hoping that that's going to continue to lead to more productive days moving forward. I mean, but really the only thing that I have the most concern about is the Raiders backfield and Ashton Genty. That's really the only question mark I have like moving forward, because man, just not seeing enough production from him. And also the Raiders offensive line continues to be a concern. So if you've got Genty on your roster, panic meter wise, he's probably going to be a fairly large talking point for this week.
Yeah, and he was last week. And like, I just don't know what's going to change here. The offensive line is not good. The passing game is very volatile. Geno Smith, 3.82 seconds from snap to throw in this game. It's just all launching it downfield to like, Trey Tucker had a great game here. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but like the Dante Thornton thing is going about as exactly what as I expected. It's only 4 weeks, but it's just like all offseason, ooh, we got our 4th round pick started to X receiver for us. And then like into the games, it's like, we got a 4th round pick started to X receiver. Meanwhile, their 2nd round pick, Jack Besh, he gets like 2 catches and he just like helps the team. So I don't know. I think they got to figure something else. They got to ask some tough questions there on offense, because they're not getting the best out of their best players, which is usually not a good sign. I mentioned just updates on the Commanders backfield. This is the last thing before we move off from this game. It's a straight up committee. Like it just, sorry, JCM bros, but it is. Snap share for the Washington backs, 39% for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, 39% for Chris Rodriguez, 26% for Jeremy McNichols, who is, the passing down back. But he also ripped off a 60-yard run that I can't believe the Raiders allowed that to be a touchdown. That was embarrassing. If you want to see how embarrassing it was, I screenshotted it. It's on my Twitter page. He finishes the leading rusher. Mariota 40 yards, Chris Rodriguez 39 yards, and JCM pops in the goal line carries. Goal line carry, but just 26 yards. And Deebo Samuel also got in the mix for 3 carries. So there's not a clear-cut starter in this backfield. All right, next game up that could have been an email. Colts 41, Titans 20. The Colts offense just keeps on rolling, even if they did finally have to punt. Meanwhile, the Cam Ward to Calvin Ridley connection is a tough watch. I think on both sides, like the veteran receiver is letting down the rookie quarterback, and the rookie quarterback is playing like a rookie quarterback. And Brian Callahan once again made just like an unbelievable game management error where it takes a delay of game as they're setting up for a field goal that then becomes a 60+ yarder. I don't know. This does not look like a good situation there in Tennessee right now.
No, I mean, even though Cam Ward had a little bit more time to operate behind the line, behind the offensive line, I mean, 35.6% pressure, which is the lowest it's been all season, which led to season highs in EPA per dropback, passing success rate, and still wound up taking 4 sacks. And of course, with Ridley only having just the 1 reception and having to rely on the 6 targets to Chig Okonkwo, and then our boy Elick Ayomaner also getting into the box. So that's where it's like you would hope that this entire passing game would be able to take a step forward as you see some more production from their QB1. But yeah, I do have some concerns about Calvin Ridley and his particular usage and like how that's going to translate for him and Cam Ward's rapport moving forward. So that's my biggest takeaway from this game.
I liked Calvin Ridley as like a mid-round pick. But hey, how could it get worse than it was last year? It's gotten worse because he's playing poorly. That's the thing. Like he's playing poorly, and like that looks like a big fat L from me. Panthers 30, Falcons 0. Speaking of big fat L, the Atlanta Falcons, they go, dude, take a big fat L for our final game of the week here. Man, the Panthers had this one from the jump amid what I thought was a very concerning outing from Michael Penix. 2 interceptions, just bouts of major inaccuracy against a bad defense. So I think Penix has just kind of been fine through the first 2 weeks. Didn't have to do much in week 2. Made some plays in week 1. This was a step back for him, and we just got to see that get right to get the Falcons offense back on track.
So watching back, because I didn't watch it live, but I caught a lot of it on the replay. So that second interception to Ray McLeod down the left sideline looked like McLeod just fell down. And then the Panthers, Panthers DB. So I won't pin the second one on. The first one, though, I'm completely with you. I mean, the level of inaccuracy that he showed, that was kind of brutal. And also it seemed like he was trying to throw either off platform or wasn't setting his feet. And a couple of plays like in the earlier parts of the game where he's double clutching and then just trying to just throw it off his back foot. So I don't know if it was just a what the Panthers were showing from a defensive secondary standpoint after the snap. But I do want to try and watch the all 22 on this one to see what shifted between at least the more confident and a more, I guess, more mechanically based passer that we'd seen out of Michael Penix for the first couple of weeks versus what we saw here in week 3, because that was a little bit concerning, especially going up against the Panthers defense that we know had been giving up quite a bit of production to not just the rushers that they faced, but also the receivers as well.
No question. Again, just a tough performance, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more Drake London panic questions next on tomorrow's episode as we go over the People's Panic Meter. I think it'll be fine for Drake London, but this was just a really concerning performance from his quarterback, and no question it's been a brutal start to the season for that passing game. But Chris, did it all. You said it all. Appreciate you doing this, buddy. Week 3, it was a wild ride here in week 3, man.
Yeah, and of course we still got Sunday night to go and the Monday night primetime game as well. So trying to take it all in, and of course we'll have as much content throughout the week, trying to process as much as we can. We're just kind of hitting this stuff rapid fire, like right off the dome. So maybe things will be not as high in terms of from a panic standpoint after we've had a couple of days to let things marinate. Maybe not for the Falcons standpoint of the game that we just talked about, and probably the same thing for my Bengals. But for everything else, maybe just give it a few days, and maybe by Wednesday, things won't be as bad as they seem right now. But maybe that's me being a little bit too hopeful.
That is Chris being too hopeful. Okay, you guys have panic out there right now. There's plenty of panic in the streets, and with that, obviously, tomorrow's episode will be the People's Panic Meter. You guys can participate. We need you to participate. So get to the front of the line. Email us, fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. Voice memos are great if you just want to type out your feelings. You can also just send in an email. If you got a video, send those in as well. Anything, we will feature you on the show. We will talk through whether you should or should not be panicked about a certain player, team, situation, etc. Justin Boone joins me for that episode tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, live right here on YouTube. Make sure to get your submissions in by 2 p.m. for that episode tomorrow. Until then, we are out.